Now let's talk about surveillance detection. What are you looking for? Most importantly, you're looking for repeats. Repeats of people or repeats of vehicles. You see the same person or people at several times during your day, during your walking routes or your vehicular routes. You see the same cars at different times of your day, around the home, around your office. These repeats have to be red flags. They have to be noticed. Things that seem out of place. People that are going to do static surveillance, for example, they need to pick a vehicle that's going to blend in, or a look about them that's going to blend into the environment, and that's frequently difficult. So if they look out of place, it's typically because they are for the environment. Strange behavior or actions that you may see. People who act like they've been caught doing something. Earlier in the presentation, I talked about the inherent paranoia that surveillance has. And many of them have this feeling, and you can use that to your advantage. They will act like they've been caught doing something if you want to look for that. Example being, you're walking down a street, you turn around and innocently turn around to look at something. Person behind you turns around real quickly or tries to hide their face. That is not typical human behavior, and you need to notice that as something unusual. Somebody walking fast across the street, seeming to look your way and be on the cell phone. Well, we just showed you paralleling, and that could be exactly happening to you. People taking photographs of your home. If they're taking a photograph of your home just because it's a nice house, it's likely they're going to get out. They aren't going to try to disguise the fact that they're taking a photograph. They'll get outside of the vehicle. They'll perhaps take their time, get everything centered, the light right, and they'll be acting quite naturally. If they're taking a photograph from inside the vehicle, that should raise your suspicion a bit. Where should you be looking for these types of activities? Again, around your home, office parking lots or in or around your office, and the choke points or funnels in between. And what I mean by choke points or funnels, no matter how many times you alter your route, it's likely that there's probably only one road that leaves your community. Maybe there's not, and you can alternate as soon as you leave your driveway, but some areas might not lend themselves to that. You may have one route that you have to take, or one road to that first stop sign or traffic light, where you can start alternating. That's a funnel point or a choke point. On the other end of your route, the office, you could have the same condition. That's where you're most likely going to have that static surveillance. And there's not much you can do about these places, but to just have that mental antenna up and be especially alert for those areas and in those areas. You should be looking on your whole commute as much as you can. Frequently visited locations. If you have that particular donut shop or restaurant or gasoline station that you like to stop in on a routine basis, you just have to be aware that there may be some vulnerability with that habit. Remember that most executive kidnappings have been carried out in driveways or in parking lots as you are getting into or out of, or the victim is getting into or out of their vehicles. And it's because of the distraction factor. How do you spot surveillance? Let's talk about techniques for spotting surveillance. You know what to look for. We've talked about where to look for it, but what techniques can you use? And I've put the first one in red because it's so elementary, it's so important. Pay attention. And this is hard because it's a typical day, it's a routine thing, you're going to work, you're coming home from work. I find myself, I'll drive to work, and many of you have probably done it as well. You drive to work and you are at your desk, and all of a sudden you wonder who drove you to the office because you don't remember anything about the route. You don't remember anything about a stop sign or what you saw on the way. It's just so routine. Paying attention and not being focused on what you're going to do when you get to the office, that's a very important and difficult thing to do. You have to make an assertive effort to do it. If you're paying attention, now you can apply these techniques and you'll see the surveillance. Double backs or reversals. Just double back on your pathway and go backwards or not backwards, not backing, but reverse your path. Perhaps go the long way around to a particular place. Channeling. You could go through the back part of a shopping center, through the back alleyway. That's not a typical traffic pattern, but if somebody follows you that way, that's a reason for concern. You need to observe that. A quick direction change. You signal to make a turn and then you don't, and the person behind you does the same thing. Or you make a quick direction change. Now, I'm not talking about causing a traffic accident by, like you see on television, skirting across 3 lanes of traffic for an exit. Don't do that. But do something that's somewhat abrupt and see if that car does the same thing that you've been wondering about. Have someone else help you look. If you're driving with people, you can have them help you look. Counter surveillance. Now, there's a lot of confusion with terminology in this discipline. A lot of people think counter surveillance and surveillance detection are the same thing. They're not. Surveillance detection is what you do to specifically detect the surveillance tactics. Counter surveillance is what someone else does for you. It's actually people employed or that you enlist to help look for the surveillance. It's watchers watching the watchers, if you will. That's what counter surveillance is. And in many programs, they have an active program to do that. People specialize in just looking for surveillance. I do not. If you see, and you will, if you pay attention, and you apply some of these techniques to spot surveillance, you'll see it. I don't suggest you confront them at the time. Keep in mind these individuals ultimately mean you harm, and they may just decide that's as good a time as any. So it's not a good idea to confront them individually, directly.